Okay, today we're here with Bryan Hoersten, and he's going to be telling us a little bit about his music education experience. So go ahead.
Good morning. So as far as my education experience is concerned, I've been teaching for 26 years. Yeah, something like that. I know after a while it gets a little hard to keep track of. Mostly instrumental music. For the last 21 years, I've been teaching in Avon Local Schools, a district just west of Cleveland in Ohio. And my primary responsibilities have been pretty varied, but mostly I've been working with beginning band, assisting or directing the high school marching band, depending on the time of year, and doing some general music, I've taught third through seventh grade general music in the district.
Wow.
Done some vocal music with beginning chorus and middle school chorus, middle school bands. About the only thing that we have in the district that I haven't taught is our string program. So yeah, it's been pretty wide variety of things.
That's great. And fun to have all that experience doing all different.
Yeah, it's been a lot of fun.
What's been your favorite?
Well, that's a great question. Primarily my background is instrumental music. So working with the beginning band kids has been pretty rewarding, because you get to see a lot of growth with them from the very beginning, when they don't really know a whole lot until the end of the first year or so, and they've made a lot of progress. And then of course being able to work with them through into the high school through the marching band activities that I've had, and also taught some concert bands up here at the high school as well. So the growth of a musician just in general is really, really rewarding. But I think probably starting with the beginners has been my most fun.
Yeah, I love my beginners. It's really cool to see that progress from the first day to their first concert. Just how much
absolutely
been able to grow.
Yeah, the learning curve is really steep at the beginning.
Yes.
And yeah, I love that progress.
That's awesome. I know you wanted to talk about some different topics today. So would you want to talk about versatility first?
Well, I mean, you can kind of tell from my background that, I've worn a lot of hats, so to speak. And I think for a music educator, it's really important that you are able to have some versatility in your career, and to be able to teach in all of those areas. I'm not particularly a great string teacher or general music teacher, but when put into that position, I had enough training to make it work, and then was able to apply some of my stronger skills and more confident teaching methods into those areas. And along the way, I was able to then also kind of pick up a few things and learn some stuff that I didn't get trained in, and it made my job a lot more interesting. And it also, I think, from a marketability standpoint as a musician, it makes you a little bit more marketable, especially when you're first looking for jobs, that you're willing to step in and do whatever it takes to get your foot in the door. And I found, especially after I graduated from university, that I wanted to in my brain, I wanted to be the high school band director. That was my goal. And I found really that, especially once I got my job here in this district, teaching the general music stuff was a lot more enjoyable than I expected it to be. And working with the younger kids was, way more enjoyable. They give you a little more appreciation, I guess. Although I still like working with my high school kiddos, because it's just a different thing. So to be able to have enough versatility and even confidence that you can do that is really important.
Yes, for sure. I think those are great tips for anyone, and new music educators too. So that's awesome. And then a little bit about failure and recovery too.
Well, and I think this ties along into what I've talked about as well, but it's also a lesson that I teach or try to teach to my beginning kids particularly, but just any musician in general, is that you're gonna probably fail more times than you succeed in terms of your playing and you're learning things, and
Mhm.
it's okay to not be successful the first time that you try it. It's okay to be not successful the 10th time you try it.
Mhm.
What you want to do is though is learn from those mistakes, learn from those errors, and not be afraid to make them again in order to continue to improve. And I think when I first started teaching, particularly, I don't know if I was patient enough. I would say that I wasn't patient enough. I know I wasn't patient enough with those kiddos, and it took me a long time and to learn that patience, and all of that was through failings.
Yeah.
I failed to be patient, and I failed to recognize that, just because when I was a beginning instrumentalist, it seemed to come a little bit easier to me, or at least I felt that way.
Yeah.
It wasn't always the same for a beginner in another stage. They're not like me, so that frustration initially, as a beginning teacher, was a little challenging. But then I
Mhm.
try to recognize the fact that, well, guess what? You're not, just because you did well or you thought you
Yeah.
were good doesn't mean that
Mhm.
kid's going to be good. You have to recognize, and that was a failing in my own teaching that I tried to learn from.
Yeah.
And we, and I'm sure you probably have heard this from other teachers, or heard in your own teaching career, that errors aren't really necessarily a problem. If you don't learn from them, that's when it becomes a problem. If you don't take those
Mhm.
mistakes and
Yeah.
try to grow with them, they're opportunities for growth.
Yeah.
And I really try to instill that in my beginners, particularly because sometimes when we're sitting in class, and I want a student to play individually, and they're a little nervous about it because there's a class full of kids and I might make a mistake,
Yeah.
and I'm like, we're all in the same
Fine.
boat together.
Yep.
Make the mistake, make it, and figure out what it is how you made the mistake, and then try to fix it and
Mhm.
keep working on it and be persistent with that. And that's a lesson that I think is really important for any teacher in any area, but particularly in performance related subjects like music and the arts.
Mm.
You're going to make those errors, and it's okay.
Yeah.
You can be confident and keep on going, and you can't give up.
Yes. Yeah. Don't give up. Keep going. Keep trying. And that's awesome to
Right.
provide that environment for students to make those mistakes and, get that opportunity to recover and learn from them.
Right. They have to feel comfortable in that kind of, you have to establish that kind of a comfortable environment for them.
Mm-hmm.
You know, nobody feels comfortable making mistakes, and making mistakes in lots of people is even
Yeah.
So
Mm-hmm.
if you have your environment in your classroom or wherever you're teaching that, that's an acceptable thing, and that there's not an issue with it, then I think kids are willing to risk things a little bit more, and to go a little bit further, and to be able to try things that they might not necessarily feel confident with in other areas. And I think it's very, very, very important that you allow for that environment to exist in your classroom.
Yes. That's great advice. And then also perseverance. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, yeah, perseverance. I mean, yeah, it's just, again, it ties back to getting started and not giving up, and knowing that when you are starting something new, that it's going to be rough, and that there is a learning curve, and that there is opportunity for making mistakes, and that even though you're going to fail at times, if it's something that you truly feel is important, then you need to stick with it.
Yes.
And perseverance, especially in learning any skill, is really something that it's a quality that you need to have, because if you just try something the first time and you don't get it and you just give up, you don't know that you will ever gain any kind of skill at it. And along with that, you also have to recognize when you get to the point where it's like, okay, this is really probably truly my limit. And that's the tougher part of things, is to know what your exact limit is. And sometimes, trying to push through that limit, you realize that you get farther than you thought you could at the beginning. And so that perseverance is really important to reach those goals. I talk about that in my teaching with my kids, and I've used it. I've dealt with it in my own career, when there were times when I felt like I'm not sure that this is the thing for me. In fact, I stopped teaching for a couple of years in the middle of my career, and realized that once I did that, that that was a really bad decision, an error, a
Yeah.
failing of my own. And when I got back into teaching, I was like, okay, if you're going to do this, you got to be persistent. You
Yeah.
got to persevere. You got to struggle through the things that are giving you struggles. You have to recognize them. You have to recognize your own successes, and build upon those. Yeah, so it's for most people, it's just about staying the course,
Yes.
and care of that way.
Yeah. So from that, what kind of brought you back to education then? What were the factors that kind of
Um,
drew you back in?
m- Mostly it was because that the areas that I explored outside of teaching just weren't as satisfying,
Yeah.
and realizing that, um, even though a situation that I was teaching in was very frustrating and was kind of what led me to stop,
Hmm.
I knew that after a couple of years that those situations aren't always going to be there, and
Yeah.
if you find a situation where you can be more comfortable, or that you at least feel enough comfort with that you can make it work,
Hmm.
um, that was a thing. And I missed working with the kids and watching that progress, and I
Yeah.
didn't realize at the time, as a young teacher, that was quite as um, rewarding for me as it eventually became. And so when you get to see that progress, and when you get to see that growth, and when you are able to be someplace long enough that you can start a kid in the 5th grade and see them graduate, and know that you've had some influence in that,
Hmm.
and that's not really why, I mean, it is part of why I do it, but it's not the
Hmm.
whole thing
Yeah.
but I just like to see that growth, and recognize that, well, maybe I pointed you down the right path,
Yeah.
because I found that in my teaching wise, most kids, um, if you point them in the right direction and they have the motivation, they're going to go beyond what your expectations
Yeah.
ever were,
Hmm.
in so many ways. And really, for me, after a certain point, my influence in what they do is pretty negligible, because they find their own paths and they start to grow in ways that I can't push them. I'm a percussionist by training,
Hmm.
and I can start the kiddos on 5th grade and 6th grade, and I can play along with them through most stuff, on most of the instruments through my training, through like 6th, 7th, 8th grade.
Yeah.
But after they get into the high school level, they've really developed their skills. They're going to be 10 times the musician on that particular instrument that I'll
Yeah.
ever will be.
Hmm.
And I'm grateful for that.
Yeah.
It's awesome to see progress, and from a certain point, that's all about what they're choosing to do,
Yes.
and not about me giving them any particular insight, other than just saying, hey, keep sticking with it, or
Yeah.
here's a musical thing that you might want to try, or
Hmm.
giving them little pointers, as opposed to being like their sole resource. Now they have
Yes.
stepped into a different world where they've got resources, people that they know, and things and experiences that they've had that allow them to continue to grow and become really some incredibly talented musicians I've worked with. It's been very, very, very rewarding.
Yep. And I'm sure they always, I know for me, I always look back at those first teachers that I had in band or whatever it was. And you always remember them for like, planting that seed in you to continue.
Hopefully
Hmm.
they remember
Yeah.
me for that.
Yes, for
Sometimes
sure.
you, oh man, I remember that guy, and he was the one. Well, in a particular story, just as kind of funny, I
Hmm.
had a student that just graduated here, and because of the nature of the beast, a lot of kids want to start on percussion. They just I want to play the drums, right? So we have to a limitation on that, depending on the number of
Yes.
students that we start overall. And this one student, he was like, oh, I want to play, I really want to play the drums. I'm like, well, here's the situation. We can only take so many students. We'll see what happens. Well, he didn't happen to make the cut,
Hmm.
but he decided on his own that he was going to get some lessons and work, and over
Wow.
the course of the next couple of years, he started on trumpet, and then he switched to French horn for a little while, but then he got
Mhm.
into the drumming thing, and he graduated this year. He's one of the best drummers that I've had to work with,
Wow.
in quite a while. And he said, uh, thanks for not letting me play the drums in 5th grade, because that really lit a fire under me, and I was mad at you for years, because you didn't let me play. And I'm like, well, I'm glad I was wrong. you know so
Yeah, sometimes that's what it takes too, So
right. Right.
That's
Yeah,
great.
you meet that obstacle and you attack it. And
Yes.
some kids will give up, but he
Mhm.
didn't. He was
Good for him.
very,
And it paid
yeah,
off. So
yes, good.
that's a
Yeah.
great story. What advice do you have for future music educators?
Uh, wow. I guess looking back on my own education, becoming an educator, really pay attention to the details of things that you're learning. Like when I was learning the pedagogy for the various
Mhm.
instruments at first, for me, it was like, oh man, this is fun. I get to learn how to play the clarinet. And I really focused more on hey, I'm learning how to play this instrument, and realized later that I hadn't paid that much attention to the pedagogical aspect of it.
Mhm.
And so when I went to start teaching, I was like, oh, I think I can remember the fingerings for this, but now what's the trick to getting them to play this? So
Yes. Yeah.
developing that uh, toolkit, so to speak, is really important. Rely upon resources that are available. That there are literally, thousands of resources available now that you have easier access to than we ever did in the past. Be critical of along with that, be critical of those resources. Make sure that what you're seeing and what you're researching and what you're finding out is going to really do the trick. And
Mhm.
sometimes that's through trial and error. You might say, oh man, this sounds like a really great idea, and you go to try it and you work with it, and
You're like, wait,
wait,
this is bad.
I've been teaching these kids wrong for like the last 6 months. I need to fix that, you know and it
Yeah.
happens. And,
Hmm.
be patient with yourself in that situation. Don't um, like I try to teach kids, don't be afraid to make a mistake in front of your kids.
Yeah.
I think I was too much of a person who was unwilling to be wrong in front of my students,
Hmm.
and I think that set up a barrier between me and them. And when they
Hmm.
realize that you're a human being and you have failings, and that you can overcome those failings, and you set that example for them, and they see that, then it makes them buy into what you're doing a
Yes.
little bit more. So don't be afraid. I guess another is, don't be afraid to make mistakes in front of your students. Don't be afraid to admit the mistakes in front of your students.
Yeah.
Because they see that, then they realize that, hey, wow, Mr. Hurston really goofed that up. He's not, like a machine. He's actually
Yeah.
a person. and
He's a
and
person.
they
Yeah.
make that connection. And I think those connections um, are very important. I know those connections are very important, and the more connections that you can make with your students, the more they're going to want to move along and do the things that you're trying to teach them. Because we have a different environment than a math teacher. The kids have to take math class, but
Yes.
they don't have to come into the room. They don't have to come into
Hmm.
the choir room. They don't have to come into
Exactly.
the room. They choose to do that.
Hmm.
And as an educator, you have a unique responsibility to help them continue to make that
Yeah.
choice over and over and over, so
Hmm.
that they continue to grow
Yeah.
as musician people. And so
Mhm.
you have to, if you make those connections, I think that makes that situation a lot easier.
Yeah, for sure. What are some tips that you have that have maybe helped you be successful in your career?
um, don't procrastinate. um, Learn lesson the hard way, and still learning that lesson. uh, you know Even if you have a task that seems pretty insurmountable, chip away at it from you know divide it up into smaller hunks, and get them done, and do them and do them and do them. And
Mhm.
even the most painful parts, sometimes it's just a matter of, okay, I just got to get through this.
Yes.
So don't don't delay. Don't put off till tomorrow what you can kind of do today, right? Don't procrastinate. Uh, uh, Develop your bag of tricks, as I refer to it, and put them to use. It's one thing to learn about something, but it's also another. Once you actually put it into application, that's where you really, really learn it.
Yeah.
Um, uh, don't be afraid to take some risks and try something. And see how it goes. Many times I've found in my teaching career that things that I didn't think were going to work have been outstanding successes, and things that I thought were going to be like, man, this is going to go like great, were just complete flops. But
Hmm.
if I don't take that risk to try it, then I never find that out.
Yeah.
um, be One of the things that I think has been the best about my career, particularly, is be collegial with the people that you work with. I've been really fortunate to have had some great colleagues, but you don't get great colleagues if you aren't a great colleague.
Yes.
If you can't work with people in a team work kind of environment that you're trying to teach to your kids, but if you don't do that yourself, it makes your job a lot harder. One of the best pieces of advice that I ever got, and I know this is kind of funny, but is like, get to know your custodial staff, because as a musician and a music teacher, and you know, sure that you are in good graces with them, because I have to come into the building sometimes, later in the evenings, and or if I need some help moving some stuff around, and the custodians are there, like, make sure that you have a good relationship with those folks, because they take care of your environment, and the more that you can do to get them on your side, help out with things that they do, do things that help to keep your classroom a little neater, and just have a good relationship with those folks. I know that seems like a weird piece of advice.
No, that's great advice. I always appreciate
that. Yeah, somebody gave me that advice before I started teaching, and it
goes a long way.
It does, yeah. So,
and it's not something I always think to share, but that's such a good piece of advice that people need to know.
Yeah. So, and that goes along with being, a good colleague. Just being a good person in the team in general is gonna make your career, I think, a lot smoother.
Definitely. Then last question is, what is one of your favorite memories or experiences as a music educator?
Oh man. There have been lots. Most recently, I have a son who's now 15, but 14 at the time. And prior to his 9th grade year, he was attending school we live in one community and I teach in another community. And so he was attending school in the community where we live. And then as a 9th grader, he's a budding musician. And I know that the music programs where I teach are outstanding compared to some other opportunities that he might have had he chosen to do some other things. And so because I teach in the district, he can come into the district as a student. So having him as a student finally has been kind of fun. I think that's been really awesome. Really, really cool to see him do his thing. And actually have an enjoyment of it outside of my encouragement. He started to find his own path. So that's pretty cool.
That's amazing.
Getting to again with the groups that I teach in Cleveland, the Cleveland area. If you've ever been and seen the Cleveland Orchestra, they have a beautiful facility at Severance Hall, and the stage is just a beautiful facility. Well, we had the opportunity as a band to go perform there, and I was one of the assistants at the time, and the director of the band said, "Why don't you conduct this piece?" So I conducted a piece on stage at Severance Hall, which was pretty cool.
That's amazing. So, such a cool experience.
Yeah. Those, I think, along with there went my lights because I've been sitting too still for a little bit. Motion sensors did. Those have been really two of the best experiences, I would say.
Those are great memories. Well, I've loved hearing about your experience and your advice, and I think you have a lot of great things to share. So thank you for your time and knowledge and everything.
No, you're welcome, Abigail. Thank you for reaching out, and I'm happy that I was able to help out.
Awesome.
When will we have an idea of the result of all of your efforts?
Probably in the next few weeks. Interviews should be done by the end of this week. And then the plan is to upload everything to YouTube and start sharing it in the next few weeks. So I'll share it to the pages again so everybody can feel free to look and see how things went. So
awesome. Very good. Well, good luck with everything else,
Thank
Abigail.
You.
Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you
pleasure.
too. Thank you so much.
Enjoy the rest of your interviewing.
Thank you, and you enjoy your summer.
Thank you. Bye-bye.